It's the most powerful role in sport, and for the first time, the president of the International Olympic Committee will be a woman. Her name is Kirsty Coventry. She is the Zimbabwean Olympic gold swimming medalist. She'll have many challenges to tackle, such as Russia's ban from the competition and President Donald Trump hosting the next Games in the United States. So, can she help bring about change? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, the most decorated African Olympian, Kirsty Coventry, will become the next president of the International Olympic Committee this summer. At 41 years of age, she is the youngest person to hold the position and will be looking to inspire the next generation to watch and compete in the Games. So, who is she and how will Kirsty Coventry make a difference to the Olympics?
The 144th IOC session has elected as the 10th president of the International Olympic Committee, Mrs. Kirsty Coventry.
A historic moment, a woman taking on the biggest job in sport, as Kirsty Coventry becomes the new International Olympic Committee president. Coventry is Zimbabwe's sports minister and a two-time Olympic swimming gold medalist. She competed in 5 Olympics from 2000 to 2016, winning 7 medals in total.
Dear President and my very dear colleagues, this is an extraordinary moment. As a 9-year-old girl, I never thought that I would be standing up here one day, getting to give back to this incredible movement of ours.
The Zimbabwean is also the first African and at 41 years old, the youngest person to lead the Olympic Committee. Her country celebrated her success as she arrived home to a hero's welcome. But challenges lie ahead for the incoming IOC president, who will officially begin her role in June. She has already pledged to open talks for the return of Russia to the Olympic Games, as she is against banning countries over wars. In preparation for the Los Angeles Games in 2028, she wants to sit down with Trump and says she can handle him.
I have been dealing with, let's say, difficult men in high positions since I was 20 years old.
There is also the issue of who will host the 2036 Olympic Games, with countries such as India, Qatar and South Africa all in the running. Plus, how will the incoming IOC leader encourage the Olympians of tomorrow, as only half of young people say the Games inspire them to participate in sport? As the most decorated African Olympian, can Kirsty Coventry be as successful on land as she was in the water?
Well, let's bring in our guests. In Bath, in England, we have Sharron Davies. She's former British Olympic swimmer. In Milan, we have Matteo Rivolta. He's a former Olympic swimmer for Italy. He competed at the 2012 and 2016 Olympic Games. And in Manchester, in England, we have Matt Lawton. He's chief sports correspondent of the Times newspaper. You're all very welcome to Roundtable. Sharron, to you first. She's a history maker. It has only taken, 130 odd years, but finally a woman will be running the IOC.
Yeah. I don't think it's the groundbreaking strapline that we would all like, because you would imagine that if a woman was taking in charge of the IOC, it would be someone that was really going to fight for women's rights. And I'm not quite sure that that's right. I mean, I would say that Kirsty's very much the continuity candidate. I've known Kirsty for a long time. I did lots of interviews with her in 2004 and 2008. Seen all of her 5 Olympic Games that she competed in. Unfortunately, I would love to see Kirsty be her own person, but at the moment, I would say that she's going to be very much in the shadow of Thomas Bach for a few years to come. Thomas Bach, has now made himself an honorary president. He's been president while 74% of the members have been made members. They all owed him a very big favour, and I think he pulled a lot of those favours in.
Matt Lawton, you were there at the vote in Greece, reporting on everything. Just tell me your impression of Kirsty Coventry coming in as IOC president.
Well, I agree with Sharron. We've known for quite a few years, really, that Kirsty Coventry was Thomas Bach's preferred option. And in the days leading up to the election last Thursday, there was a lot of talk of the need for Kirsty to win in the first round, because as this vote was going to develop, as it went through the rounds, it was very much suspected that it would become a bit more of a two-horse race between Juan Antonio Samaranch Jr. and Lord Coe, Seb Coe. She needed to win early, and she needed 49 votes because 97 people were voting, because there's I think it's like 108, 109 members, but some of them are excluded, while people of their own nationality are in the election race. And she got 49 votes, which was extraordinary, and as was the fact that these guys have been campaigning for 6 months. I would actually say in some cases longer than that. I think Seb really started his campaign trail 18 months ago in Budapest at the World Athletics Championships. Watanabe, the Japanese candidate, talks about spending the last 8 years campaigning for this, and it was all over in 2 minutes. So, yeah, I think she is the person that the existing hierarchy at the IOC wanted. And I find that slightly troubling because, as Sharron knows as well as anyone, the stuff that we saw in Paris with the whole furore over the Chinese 23 positives in the Chinese swimmers and in the boxing. And I was there that day at the women's boxing when the Italian fighter withdrew after a couple of blows to the head. It was a mess. The IOC needs to change, and I'm not sure it will with Kirsty Coventry in charge.
Matteo, to you, how do you feel as a swimmer seeing a fellow swimming champion get the biggest job in sport?
I don't know the candidate as well as my colleague here today, but my expectation, my wish as a swimmer, as a former athlete, is that Kirsty Coventry could bring the focus back where it should have been, or on the athletes. Because I say this because in my recent years, I saw that a lot of attention shifted to political or social matters, and athletes paid this price. For example, in Paris, in the last Olympics, I was not there because I retired just before, but keeping in touch with my former teammates, I can guarantee that the green choice not to install the air conditioning in the village room was extremely challenging. And that's why, for example, many teams left the Olympic village to stay somewhere else. Or another decision that in the last Paris Olympics was quite controversial was the choice to host the open water swimming in the Seine River. And that was a great marketing move, I mean, for the city of Paris, but technically speaking, was not suitable at all to host that a kind of event. And for this reason, I think that the focus should be moved back to the core business of the Olympic Committee, so the athletes themselves.
Sharron, that's a very good point, isn't it? I mean, from the outside looking in, everyone thinks the Olympics should be all about the athletes. The politics should be on one side, everything else parked. The athletes should have the best opportunity, the best facilities, the best chance to get a medal.
Yeah, I think Matteo's hit the nail on the head. You know, that is what the athletes were after. And if this poll had gone to the athletes, I don't think there'd been any doubt. I think Seb would have won by miles, because what he was trying to do was to be transparent about the Olympics, to bring it into the 21st century, to center the athletes themselves, to say this is all about, elite performances and getting the best out of them. I think one of the big things that went against Seb was the fact that he actually paid the track and field athletes their $50,000 for winning. And the IOC have been trying very hard to make sure that that's not what happens with regards to the sport. You know, and the athletes are the show, you know, and they are professional athletes now. And you wouldn't imagine any other professional athletes just turning up and not being paid to be there. And they're not being prize money. You know, the show is them. So they deserve some of that money. And I think at the moment, I think it's about 4% of what the billions that the IOC takes goes back to the actual Olympic athletes themselves. It's a very, very small amount of money. So as I said earlier, this is all about maintaining the status quo and not rocking the boat. I was astonished that on the first day in Paris, the per diems, the daily allowance for the IOC members went up to €900 a day to be volunteers when every single penny of their expenses is covered. You know, they have 5-6-star hotels, they have personal drivers, they have seats to every major event that's going on, they have food that's supplied 24/7. They don't need a penny of expenses. They certainly don't need €900 a day. And those are the things that the IOC are doing wrong, and those are the things that they're protecting like crazy. And I don't know whether they will change until they're forced to, a bit like FIFA. You know, but I think myself, along with all the athletes, were very much hoping that Seb would be made the president so that he could drag them into the 21st century, you know, in a much more transparent way.
Matt, Lawton, you were there reporting on it. Seb Coe of the United Kingdom, he got 8 votes in total. Why do you think so few people wanted to go with his vision of the future for the Olympic movement?
Quite simply because the current administration, Thomas back down, were lobbying for Kirsty Coventry. And if you think about it, they have the power. They are in a position to make the promises they might need to make. And I think the way that they had done the modelling is that they expected in the first round, they thought Coventry would get about 40 votes. And again, just to remind people, there were 97 votes available. They thought she would get 40, Samranch would get 28, which is exactly what he got, and Seb in the first round would get about 20. And then, as I say, some of those 40 would come away from Coventry, and it would develop, was the view of a number of experts, into this fight between, as I described it in Sports Ultimate, Nepo baby, because it wasn't that long ago that his dad was the president of the IOC, Samranch. And that was the way it would develop. And it was quite clear that in the weeks, months, days, hours even, that the votes that people thought would go with Coe and possibly with Lepartian and maybe even Faisal were targeted to jump across to Coventry. So that's how it happened. But I just wanted to pick up on the point that Sharron made, Enda, which is she's so right about one of the things I think Seb lost the election on was this desire, to share some of this money with the athletes. The fact of the matter is, there's a sort of $7 or $8 billion goes through the IOC through every Olympic cycle, and I witnessed last week the sheer indulgence, the sheer levels of. These people are absolutely, now some of them are royals, but they are all treated like royals. There were indeed 131 infinity pools in the hotel where they had this event, literally a pool for every year that the IOC has existed. There was a Hollywood movie being made there. They had to ground the helicopters for this Christopher Nolan movie because the IOC were in town. We had to drive 4 hours from Athens airport because that was the closest airport we could get to this election event. They were coming in on private jets to an airport just down the road. It is sort of grandeur on a different scale within sport. They are different even to FIFA, to UEFA, because of the people that populate the IOC. It is not, these people are not elected in the way that we would expect people to be elected normally. It is private invitation. The mere fact that, as I say, as Samranch Senior was stepping down as president, he got his son in the room. He got his son membership to this incredible club, and they just make it up as they go along. There's no transparency. We don't know who voted for who. We don't know how it developed at all. It's all done in complete secret. They weren't allowed to campaign publicly. The candidates, the whole thing is it's bizarre.
Matteo, I'm very shocked to hear all of this large yes for the officials and the hangers-on surrounding the IOC. Paint us a picture then of life when you go to the Games as an athlete representing Italy. You should be having the very best of everything, not these officials.
I agree with the need to improve support for athletes during and after their career, because that is crucial not only for the athletes themselves, but also for the survival of the smaller sport. And I agree also with the need to restoring trust in IOC from trust from athletes, from public, from the future generation, because only with an athlete-centered point of view, with the fair rules and safe environments and less political noise and more transparency, we can bring the Olympic movement great again.
Thanks, Matteo. Sharron, looking ahead to Los Angeles then in 2028, do you have any confidence that things will get better for the athletes and the experience and the reputation of the Games? Because if we can't believe what we're seeing, sport is gone.
Well, I mean, the athletes are amazing, right? So the athletes will still put on the most incredible show. You know, they will still see wonderful performances, but it's almost against the tide rather than with the tide. They're certainly not being centered. I mean, the sad thing for me is that Kirsty was on the executive board during Paris. So, you know, if she was someone that was going to speak up for women, or she was going to speak up for better drug testing and for the integrity of the sport and centralizing the athletes, she would have done that already. And that's what I find very depressing, is that it will be more of exactly the same. Whether there's going to be pressure exerted externally, that's a different matter. You know, I think that certainly with LA, we've got Trump that is saying that he will protect the integrity of women's sport, which is very important to me. It's something I've been talking about for a long time.
Sharron, just on that point about President Trump, Kirsty Coventry says she has been dealing with difficult men since she was 20 years old. How do you think she'll get on with President Trump?
Well, she's been taking big prizes from difficult men, including a suitcase full of $100,000 and a farm that she was given as well. So, I mean, I'm not sure that she actually did anything terribly difficult with these difficult men. I think she just went along with what these difficult men were very happy to do. So we will see. But they will want to have LA. You know, we can't change it now, just 3 years away from the next Olympic Games. So therefore, they will have to work with Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump says that he's going to insist that it's women are only allowed to compete in the sports category at the Olympic Games in LA with other females, then they will have to do something about that. So maybe their hand will be forced.
Matt Lawton, where does Kirsty Coventry stand on the issue of Russia competing then? Is there pressure for them to be allowed to compete at LA 2028?
Well, in an interview she gave with Sky on Friday, I think it was, she suggested she was certainly open to a further conversation with that. I think while we have the situation in Ukraine, I don't see anything dramatically changing. Look, I think with Kirsty Coventry, again, agreeing with Sharron here, but yeah, her track record as an athlete representative on the IOC and indeed as a member of the executive committee, she doesn't appear to be particularly progressive or proactive. I hope that she's actually pretty cute and she's been playing the game to get into power, because I think the one thing we have realised with Seb is that by being the reform candidate, you don't get into power. So perhaps she has been, doing what is necessary to get into the hot seat. I was actually at an event last night where her one campaign sort of advisor, he was there and he was insisting to me that we will see, now that she has the keys to the presidential office, we will see strong leadership, we will see reform. The way I would like to see that happen is to start with WADA, to start with the fact that right now, half the board is occupied by the IOC. I think it massively compromises the independence of WADA, and I think the Chinese swimming scandal has highlighted just how problematic that situation is. So she may prove to us over the coming years that she is the leader that the IOC needs. The problem is that Seb Coe, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people, was so obviously the leader that the IOC needed because of what he's done since 2015 at World Athletics. Just today, this groundbreaking regulation around protecting the female category. But you just have to remember that where World Athletics was when he took over in 2015, it was called the IAAF at the time. The guy he replaced as president, Lamine Diack, was in a court in Paris facing major corruption charges. They were absolutely on their knees in terms of the integrity of the sport. He created the AIU. We spent the last 30 years thinking that Kenyan distance runners were brilliant only because of their physiology and their environment. Turns out a lot of them were actually on drugs. Been over 200 positives in Kenyan distance running since Seb took over. They had the leader they need right there, but they didn't want him. And you have to ask yourself why that is and why they've gone for Kirsty Coventry.
Matteo, to you in Italy, just talk me through how much excitement is there then ahead of the next Winter Olympics, which will take place in the north of Italy next year?
Yeah, I mean, we have been waiting for a few years for this iconic event. I mean, I remember I lived in Torino 2006, 20 years ago, and it was a great moment for our nation and for the north of Italy as well. And it will be the first test for Kirsty Coventry, even if obviously all the operational decisions are already set, but it could be the first chance to see how Kirsty Coventry will decide to manage to handle that situation.
Sharron, final point to you. What do you think success will look like if Kirsty Coventry is to make a success of this role? She's got this position now for at least 8 years.
I so hope Matt is right, that that she's played the long game. I'm not sure that's the case, but that's what I would love to see. For me, it's always been about the athletes first. It's about centering our elite athletes. It's not about this. The IOC should not be run for 100 IOC members. It should be run for the world's athletes. And that's what they need to do first and foremost. And for me, she would be a success if she did that.
Sharron, that largesse that Matt spelled out earlier on that he saw firsthand, I mean, I've reported with this guy for 2 decades. He's telling the truth.
He is telling
infinity
the truth.
pools.
He's 100% telling the truth.
131 infinity pools, private jets, helicopters buzzing everywhere. I think viewers will be shocked to know that this is what goes on. This is not the athletes. These are the random officials from countries all over the world coming in for a big jolly.
Yeah, and that's the tip of the iceberg as well. That really is. That's the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a fantastic book out there called Lord of the Rings, which is really worth reading just to see the corruption that has been around in the IOC for absolutely decades. I mean, unfortunately for me, I was competing when Juan Antonio Sanranch was in charge of the IOC, and he allowed the East German state to dope their athletes for 20 years. 20 years of not stopping those East German girls from dominating the world of sport. And they beat 2 generations of young women out of the medals, but more importantly, those young East German girls were literally lab rats, and many of them have died. All of them are really, really sick, and Sam Ranch could have stopped that, and he chose not to. So I have not a lot of time for these men that have been part of these organizations for a very long time. It's very, very incestuous. It's, that they're all inside this club that's looking after each other, and they should be centralizing the athletes. So hopefully she can do that. Hopefully this first woman in this position after 131 years, 10th president, can turn around and fool us all and actually put the athlete first.
Matt, final point to you. Will she do that? Will she be the IOC president who puts athletes first?
Well, if she does, she's got to very quickly distance herself from the people that have helped put her into power. I think that's the key. And indeed, from some of the people that essentially run the IOC, the sort of, the sort of civil servants of the IOC, if you like. Because the fact is, we come back to prize money for athletes, and the IOC hated it. They hated what Coe did. They found it offensive. And yet these guys who all had little grins on their faces after she'd won the election, their salaries are extraordinary. Director General, $1.5 million a year. The head of comms, $650,000 a year. The number 2 head of comms, $500,000 a year. These guys are living the most extraordinary life. And meanwhile, the athletes are being told it's wrong to get $50,000 if you win an Olympic gold medal. And as I say, I'm sitting here with the 2 Olympians. Only they understand what it takes to win an Olympic medal. But I think that's worth an awful lot more than the money that you get paid to be the press officer for the IOC.
Matt Lawton, Matteo in Italy, and Sharron Davies, thank you all so much for your insight on this one. Fascinating stuff. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable, TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all of the team here, goodbye, and thank you for watching.